What's up, everybody's Digital World Podcast. And regulation seems to be knocking on the door. And this narrative, one that we've been talking about a lot, seems to be gaining a lot of traction. And we see here this is Congressman Tom Emmer, okay, on the House FinTech Task Force. And he talks about a lot of these uh, acts that have to do around regulatory clarity for digital assets. Listen to what he has to say. It's a quick 2-minute clip.
Innovators should not have to hire a team of lawyers to decipher their industry's regulations. And they
Talking about Ripple right here. Exactly what's happening.
shouldn't pay the price for an unclear regulatory framework created by their government. One such effort is the reintroduction of our Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act. This proposed legislation affirms that blockchain developers and service providers who never take custody of consumer funds, like miners and multi-signature service providers, do not have to register as money transmitters in each and every state. While this guidance is practiced by FinCEN, having legislation like the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act is now more important than ever, as the Financial Action Task Force, an international standard-setting body, is considering rules which would make it difficult for non-custodial entities to innovate. Another item we're working on is the Securities Clarity Act, which provides straightforward regulations for digital assets by clarifying that a digital token is separate from the securities offering that it was a part of. This will allow companies to distribute their tokens without fear of retroactive enforcement actions, while the rules of the road regarding tokens continue to be developed. You have my commitment to continue working with my colleagues and regulators alike to ensure the blockchain industry remains accessible and that the federal tax and regulatory framework does not box out newcomers or more innovation. It's not a matter of if, but when blockchain technology becomes part of daily life for every American. As the industry grows, I look forward to working with all of you to develop solutions that encourage entrepreneurship in this promising space. Again, thank you for allowing me to speak with all of you today.
And there you have it. So he's really pushing for this regulatory framework. And we see here that we have the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act, we have the Securities Clarity Act, Digital Commodity Exchange Act, and Eliminate Barriers to Innovation Act. Now, Big XRP also posted this, Gary Gensler, Congress should provide clarity around crypto exchange regulation. And we heard that in his interview not too long ago. I believe it was last week. And he said it's the real first hint we have at how the SEC chief will approach the digital asset industry. And we know that the Digital Commodity Exchange Act is something that Brad Garlinghouse was advocating for in his interviews on CNBC. And we also have the Eliminate Barriers to Innovation Act. There's a lot of things that are ready to roll, and they should just be passed by Congress. And this will give a lot of clarity and a lot of, or a regulatory sandbox in which digital assets can operate in. And this case with the SEC is very interesting because, as I've been saying on this channel, once that case is done, then it's gonna give XRP the full clarity that it needs in order to thrive and be used at its max potential. Now, I'm not saying that it's gonna, XRP and its price is gonna take off all of a sudden as soon as that happens. It's gonna reach, triple digits, 4 digits, 5 digits. No, but it will in case of a liquidity crisis and nations have to resort to an emergency option. Well, if you have full clarity on what the digital asset is, you can now fully implement it. And that's what I mean, it'll have full regulatory clarity that will be able to be used at a moment's notice because it's now within the regulatory framework. Now, transitioning into this. Anders L posted this. He said, "What's the thing with Ripple and the U.S. Treasury?" He said, "Three of the most recent additions to the Ripple board of directors have ties to the U.S. Treasury Department. Two of them joined after the lawsuit was filed." And he's mentioning here Rosie Rios, who, in fact, signs our dollar bills. I've seen it in the $1, the $20, and the $100 bill. And if that doesn't tell you what you need to know, I don't know what else will. She's literally signing your money, which is a huge deal. Now, the other is Sandy O'Connor. Sandy O'Connor and Rosie Rios joined after the lawsuit. And we see Sandy O'Connor worked with JP Morgan, okay? And she has a lot of experience with the markets. And so it'll be interesting to see what she does. And she's a former member of the Treasury Markets Practices Group, sponsored by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. So these people are really integrated with the U.S. Treasury. And of course, we have Craig Phillips, who was counselor to Steve Mnuchin. Okay, and all these connections. I mean, Gary Gensler said he was waiting on guidance from the U.S. Treasury. Now that's something that makes you go, because if we're waiting on the U.S. Treasury, we know that Vincent in 2015 declared XRP a virtual currency. So what's the holdup? What's this SEC lawsuit about? And like the digital asset investor says, something just smells very fishy, and this all seems to be a game. And the more we look into what's actually happening, the more it does not make sense. And the more it seems like this is just one big stage. And everything, we're just watching it unfold right before our eyes. And now, one thing that caught my eye is Stanley Druckenmiller. He is a very renowned uh, individual who, when he speaks, people listen. And he says that he thinks the dollar will be replaced as the world reserve currency by crypto. And here it's very short, but it says the argument that the dollar is losing prestige worldwide got a major boost from a legendary investor. You can watch the episode in which he says it. But he said the dollar will lose reserve currency status in the next 15 years. The most likely candidate to replace it, crypto. So listen to this interview with Stanley Druckenmiller, and you'll realize that his words hold weight. So him saying this on a mainstream media channel is very significant. Okay, now to finish this off, here is an individual from JP Morgan talking about Ripple and XRP. And he says, if Ripple can get more banks joining their platform, then after a certain point, the rest of the banks will have to follow suit because everybody's using it. And something I've um, heard, which is very true, is banks don't want to be first, but they all want to be second. So they don't want to be the first to adopt it, but once that first bank adopts it, then the rest of them come flooding in. And look what he has to say.
What we see, for instance, in the APAC region, everyone wants to start an e-wallet. The biggest issue is not starting an e-wallet. The biggest issue is that a shop accepts your e-wallet and getting that access points across the globe. Because, let's be honest, someone has an e-wallet because they want to pay. And if you only have one store, nobody's going to use it. And it's the same thing, I think, from a blockchain and a payment perspective, is you have to have enough contributors to really make a dent and make the change happening. And then that's, I think, what you'll see is like the central banks are trying, really hard to initiate blockchain projects, etc., but get everyone involved. And as long as it's only one party doing it, it's not going to happen. It needs to be multiple parties across. So you have like what we call in Singapore, we have Project Ubin, which is MIS, but there's also blockchain projects in other countries like Canada. Everyone is looking at it. But again, it really needs to come driven by the industry. And that's really also why SWIFT has been so successful, because all the banks own SWIFT. And it's a global standard which is happening, and then Ripple, of course, coming in with their own current cryptocurrency and their own blockchain. It really is how many parties can you get onto the chain, because that's really happens. It's like, how do I connect to you? And it's the same. That's why corresponding banking, 40 years, 30 years ago was developed, because I would like to pay you, but I don't have a direct connectivity with you. So it's really other information.
Right. So it's sort of like a race to just see how quickly, one sort of platform can get to all of these different banks. And then, I guess after a certain point, then the rest of the banks will have to sort of follow suit because everybody's using it.
Exactly.
Now, and that was a perfect ending to it. And it kind of reiterates the point of, no one wants to be first, but everyone wants to be second. And the fact is that they'll basically have no choice, because once everyone's using it and fully maximizing the utility of the digital asset, they'll be having a major advantage, because now they're ahead of the game. Now they can settle in basically 3 to 5 seconds. They can save millions upon millions, maybe even billions of dollars, depends on how much they're moving across different places. So there'll be no choice, or get left behind. That's what's going to happen. But I really do believe that there's going to be a seismic shift before this occurs. And we've been seeing a lot of cyber attacks happening lately. And that's leading the narrative towards what's coming. And if there is, like Klaus Schwab says, a major cyber attack that'll bring everything to a complete halt, things will get very, very sticky at that point in time. And there'll have to be a shift in our infrastructure, which is very critical. Hope this episode has brought you some value. Like and subscribe, comment below. Let me know what your thoughts are on this shift that's going to take place. This is the Digital World Podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.